want you to listen to this song. I heard it over in Winona Lake years ago. We were over there. We'd come through, and a lady got up, a Messianic Jewish lady got up and sang this song. And when I hear a song that has guts, that's not very nice. Intestinal fortitude. I'll just say guts. I can tell when I hear a song if it's got real grab to it. And I can tell also if it's one that I can sing. Now, I don't sing well, I sing loud. And everybody's usually able to hear me. But I sing because there's a message in songs, and if somebody walks very close to the Lord, that experience sometimes is turned into a musical outpouring. And if you sing, you can tell. And of course, I don't have any training or particular talent, so all I go by is how it grips me inside. And I hear some pretty songs and some lovely songs. I like to hear other people sing, but I don't like them. I don't like to sing them. They don't do anything to me. I want a song to tear me up when I sing it, because if it doesn't touch me, it's not going to touch the people. If it's not going to touch the people, why bother? That's my view about these things. It's about time you showed up. I've been stalling, waiting for you to. I'm just having trouble with my disobedient children. They're scattered all over the place this morning. I will say this while he's getting all hoofed up here. Get your lips all puckered, too. This young man, by the way, is a fellow who could never play by ear at all. And when he was in his early years, when he was a wicked child, he was playing, and he always wanted to play, but he had to have the music exactly to play by. And after he came here, of course, we didn't have the music for most of the stuff, and so he said something. I said, would it be all right if I played my trumpet? I said, sure. I didn't know you played the trumpet. And he said, well, I can only play by music. And I said, well, we got the music for a few of them. And I said, go down there in the book room and get one of the tapes of the Hagway Sings, and it's got a lot of the songs that we use here. I said, I believe you can play by ear. No, he couldn't do that. I said, well, we'll see. And so, and after he played at home a few times, he was going along, and all of a sudden he started taking off, and he could do it. It's a God-given thing. And so when you hear Stu play, you'll know this is, he had taken the training, spent hours and all that you have to do to do a musical instrument well. But then the Lord touched it, and it's even better. And this young fellow up here in the organ, I don't think he knows what notes are either. If I remember right from talking to him, is that right? He knows a few of them, okay. Yeah. And Monty, he doesn't even pay any attention to nothing. He just stands up there. I've gotten on to him time and again. I said, Monty, watch the music. You're liable to get off. And he'll just stand there and grin. You'll plug. You know? And Monty, I tell you a tale on him too. He was, when he first, I believe if I remember right, when he first got straightened out with the Lord and everything, he wouldn't even touch the guitar. Is that right, Monty? Because he had been in a rock and roll band. His wife played the drums, and he was playing the bass. And so he wouldn't even touch it because he had been in that mess head over heels, and he was broken with it, and he wouldn't even touch it. Well, he came here, and I found out he played. And I said, why don't you play? I said, we'll get you a bass guitar. You play it. No, I better not do that. He's afraid it'd grab him again, you know. And I said, well, you can do that for the Lord, son. Use that talent for the Lord. And as usual, I got my way. No, that just popped right out, I'll declare. No, he got him started, and so the only problem I've had with him, he won't go by the music. He just stands up there and plays. And then I have to tell you a tale about Dennis over here. He's waiting over there.
Just sing the song.
Just sing the song? No, you go ahead and study the accidentals while I tell him. Monty's saying don't miss anybody. Dennis, when he came, he told you about how he came with his T-shirts and tennies. And he, by the way, this Dennis, when he first came, there was an evil spirit in him, a great, humongous monster. And that thing hated the ground I walked on. And so Dennis would come in the back door, and I'd be back there, and he'd run up and start to hug me, and that thing would manifest every time I touched him. And he'd start going, like a dinosaur on a rage, you know. And I'd say, pray, Dennis. And Dennis would have to pray in tongues to keep from slugging me. And that's what he said. Now, but I found out that he could play the piano. I said, well, you'll have to play for us. No, he wasn't going to do that. Music had been a trap for him too, and no way. Well, that was just a suggestion, you know, that he wasn't going to play. And so I went talking to the Lord about it, and I kept pestering him, and finally he started playing, and here he is. And he's playing today, and he's an engineer, and they like everything to be exact, and that's the way music is, except when I sing it. And but I started to tell you, I heard this song over in Winona Lake, and this lady sang it, and it just tore me up. I sat there and bawled like a baby when I heard it. I told my wife, I said, I got to have that song. I got to have that song. And I went up and asked her what book it was in, and she didn't know. And I came back, and I went through a uproar hunting. I went to the Christian bookstore, and I went through all their music. I said, I'm looking for a song. And I came back home, and I couldn't find it. Came back home, got to thumbing through some old books I had that I bought years ago, and there it was. And I got busy and pestered my wife till I learned it, because I have to learn it by learning memorizing the tune first. So if they don't play the tune like I do, they're wrong. I'll tell you that ahead of time. My wife gets after me sometimes. She say, honey, you get up there and you take off and go a different direction, then everybody thinks the instruments are all wrong, because you don't said you don't even let on, you just go on like poor instruments, they're off, you know, and everybody But seriously, this song really gets to my heart, and I'm not going to make it through it. I hadn't even started singing the doggone thing, and it's doing it to me. This is going to be a wild session, I think. It's got a message you need, though. Go ahead, Dennis. When I think how Jesus suffered on the cross for me, dying there in shame and agony, so that I could be redeemed and live eternally, I can do no less than now exclaim, I'll be a friend of His through all my days. I'll walk life's road with Him. I'll sing His praise. Someday in the glory I shall see him face to face. There I'll fall before those nail-pierced feet. Thank him for his mercy, his redeeming love and grace. His sweet name adoringly repeat. I'll be a friend of his through all my days. I'll walk life's road with him. I'll sing his praise. Though others pass him by and walk away, I'll be a friend of his will obey. I never could repay the debt I owe for all he's done for me. Full well I know, but I can live for him who died for me, and be a friend of his for eternity. I don't know whether, I guess we'll hang that up for a little bit. I'm not in any shape to sing right now. Give me something to blow my nose. Thanks. It's nice that at Hegwish we're rather informal. The preacher's liable to break down and bawl at any minute. Demons are liable to scream from any pew, and or somebody jump up and start shouting, getting happy shout all over the place. You just never know what's going to happen around here. And we try not to restrain the spirit. We don't want to. We just want him to do what he wants to do. And I have a strange feeling that something's going to be accomplished this morning, because this is not what I wanted to do. My business is to train up workers and push them up to carry the load. And you have noticed that this place is like an angry beehive around here, with dedicated men and women who are carrying the load. Many of them do all kinds of little menial tasks, some of them complicated tasks, some of them anybody could do, some of them nobody could do with them. And there's so much going on, it's amazing. And somebody asked me, said, how in the world do you get a church to do this? I said, I don't know. I said, I just started out and I was overloaded and couldn't do it all myself. And somebody came up and said, could I help you do that? And I said, sure. Let me show you what I'm doing. And then they'd take over and do that. And the next thing you know, well, they were busy doing that and I was busy doing something else. And little by little, it just grew. It's kind of like Topsy, it just grew. There wasn't any structure or plan. Unfortunately, now, being from Southern Baptist background, I know how to organize things and get things done. Because Southern Baptists are, if they're good about one thing, it's organization. I mean, they can drop a committee on you at the drop of a hat. I mean, to do whatever is necessary and involve everybody in the church. But I never got around to doing that. We don't have a single committee here. And we don't have, you say, well, are you against committees? No, I think they'd be nice. We just never have needed one, and things get done so well and easy till I figure I don't want to mess it up with what the Lord's doing here. And I don't know whether he'll do this everywhere or not, but he's done it here, and it works.
And for the sake of you new fellas, I'm going to take the prerogative of an old man. I'm going to reminisce a little bit. Some of you have heard this before. But if you don't believe that God is in little things, look around you. See what God has wrought. When I came to English, as I mentioned the other night, I told the church, this church is just small enough, insignificant enough, the preacher's just dumb enough, that God might do a great thing here, because nobody would ever be thinking that the church or the preacher had done it. They'd know it had to be God that did it. And so, of course, I just did it kind of laughingly. I didn't know about prophecies in those days. And one just popped out and I didn't know it. But, that's what's come to pass. And I had read many years ago when I was a student in college, I picked up a little old tract, it may be still in print, it's a blessed thing, called Little is Much When God is in It. It was a story of two old maids. And they had very meager living allowance, and they spent all their spare money on tracts. And then they would go and get on trolley cars and ride back and forth on the trolleys all over the city all day long, handing out tracts and witnessing. And people said, well, that's nothing, And their motto was, little is much when God is in it. They prayed before they went out. There's no telling how many hundreds of people got saved because those two guys, it just blessed me to read that. And so in the back of my mind, I knew that little was much. And the more I read the scriptures, the more I realized that everything God had ever done that was great was done with a little bunch. And artists always start with one. So I went looking around for the one that I could hang on to, find that man that had the vision. I could hang on his coattail and help him to do whatever was to done. Don't do that. You're liable to end up with your coattail hanging out. Instead of looking for somebody else, you find out there's nobody out there. And I was sliding to hell from a church pew when I got saved. I was starched and ironed, never been washed, and just as righteous as I could be. I was so righteous I squeaked when I walked. When I walked along, my spiritual self said, I am righteous, look at me, look at me. A lot of people, there's a lot of people starched and ironed, never been washed. Don't hesitate to check somebody's salvation out. There may be somebody sitting there, better not ask me about mine. Why? What's the matter? You have doubts? The only reason you'd have a doubt about your salvation is if you're not sure it's real. Check her out. If it's a diamond, it'll come out a diamond every time it's examined. And every examination will declare, yep, that's a diamond. It's a little bitty one, but it's a diamond. And so don't go around and wonder and don't go around guard. If somebody asks you, are you born again? Say, yes, sir. Tell them about it. Don't be mad about it. Because especially around here, they'll start praying for your salvation. Because they figure if you don't know about it, you need to get it. You say, well, I don't know. Well, now if you don't know about your salvation, you may lose it and never miss it. So I'd get something I knew about, would you? Because you can't lose the kind the Bible has. I want to tell you right now, in the light of all this weather around, I do not have a drop of Eskimo blood in my body. And God snaked me up from the Southland, moved me up here from the Bible Belt, and you talk about a grumbling, grouchy Jonah. That was me. He sent me to a place that I never would have picked. Well, I first came up here for a revival meeting. Baptists have revival meetings. And a friend of mine had come up here and was in a nearby suburb over in Chicago. And so he called me one day, he ran me down, and he said, Win, what you doing these days? I said, well, I'm just singing, preaching here, there, and yonder. He said, you want to preach a meeting up here in Chicago? I said, sure. And he said, well, there's a little Southern Baptist church up here. He said, preachers are scarce up here. Well, there was plenty of them down where I was. The woods are full of them. Most of them wasn't any count, but I mean, there was a bunch of them around. And so he said, okay, well, the pulpit committee called me the other day, their committee called me the other day, and they're looking for somebody to hold a meeting for them. He said, but I have to warn you now, if you come up here, they're going to call you to pastor, I'm pretty sure. I said, why? He said, well, because we don't have any preachers up here, and they're looking for preachers. It's hard to get them up here. I said, oh, well, we'll pass that bridge when we get to it. I thought, Chicago, forget it. I was there one time, I didn't like it. And I passed through when I was in the service. I thought, good, I'm glad I don't live here. And knowing that the Lord would protect me from the awful horrors of living in the Northland with all those foreigners. And so anyway, I wasn't worried about it. And I got on the train, came up here, came up on the train. And so I came in I walked in this tiny little church over there, 30 by 28 foot, let's see, no, it's 50 feet. Auditorium's about 50 by 28. It was 30 foot wide, but there's 1 foot thick walls. I didn't know why they put such thick walls till after I moved up here. They was trying to keep warm. And so I came up this little church, and I walked in, and up on the scoreboard up there, for the last Sunday, they had 13 in Sunday school, and the offering was $15, I think, 14 cents or something like that. I thought, well, they're not running over with money, that's for sure. Fortunately, I didn't come from money, so that's all right. And so they were very nice, and it happened to be a bunch of Tennessee and Alabama hillbillies. It was a colony up here. And I say they were a colony because they worked here and they had their homes here, but they went back home for vacations and everything else. And none of the natives were in their church that lived up here. Now when Cousin Tom or Aunt Matilda came up, of course they funneled her into the church. And so, unfortunately, I talked right. I was from Texas. And so they liked the sound of my Texas wang, and I talked right. So we got up and started to have the meeting, and there was an old pastor here that had been, a retired pastor had been covering for him while they didn't have a pastor. By the way, I found out later they'd had enough bad preachers to kill 16 churches. I think every rotten preacher in the country had come through and blasted them. But anyway, the building, they told me they didn't have many people. Well, I thought that don't matter. We just get people saved that come, that's all. And the building was just packed. And they said they didn't have young people. There's a whole bunch of kids in here, young teenagers and stuff. And so I said, I thought you said you didn't have any people. I said, your building's practically full. They said, we never saw these people before. We don't know where they came from. I didn't know it, but they let down the net, and here come all those fish. And God was setting things up. And I started preaching, and the Lord really blessed, and there were a lot of people saved, and a lot of things good accomplished. And sure enough, they saw that pulpit committee toward the last of the meeting. They called me in conference and said, we want you to come pastor our church. And I said, well, I can't do that. I knew I was safe. They didn't have any money, and I didn't either. And it takes money to move a family. And here we were. We'd been, I had 3 suits, all threadbare, and we had no clothes for living in this North Pole up here. Well, this isn't the North Pole, but there's a barbed wire fence between here and there, and it's down this morning. But anyway, so we had no clothes. We could not move. We couldn't afford to sell our old furniture and stuff because we'd never be able to replace it. And so we hashed it around a little bit. And they offered me one thing. I said, there's no use me telling you I could come for that. I couldn't do it. There's no way. I can't support my family that way. And I said, I'll probably have to work anyway, and I don't mind doing that as long as the church will agree to that.
I don't want him fussing and fuming. I said, I don't expect my family to starve. I've got 3 kids and everything. And so anyway, the 4 people in the room went together and they agreed to add so much to their tithe every week to make it up. And then they turned around and offered me another offer. Well, that, unfortunately, that's the amount I had set in my mind that they'd have to come up with, and I knew they wouldn't do it. And they did. They hit me right across the face with it. I was going to be wealthy, $75 a week. And they had a little house they were going to furnish for me. So I said, well, then we got another problem. I said, I don't have any money to move on. And I said, I'm 1,100 miles from here. And I don't have any money to move my stuff on. They said, well, we'll go to work on that. And that, we checked the price out, and it was going to be a healthy chunk. And money was money back those days. And this is what, 30 years ago? So, man, it's been a long time. Anyway, so I went home safe, because I thought, well, bless her. I told my wife, I said, well, they really need a preacher, but I said, they'll never be able to raise that money. And I thought, unfortunately, we don't have it, so I can't just go ahead and do it and say, well, Lord, you gave me this money, so we'll just go ahead and move. So I was safe, see, I thought. And I want you to know that 2 weeks from the day I left up here, I had a phone call. They had all the money to move me. And my heart sank like a rock. I thought, Lord, how can you do this to me? You know I don't like cold weather. And why do I have to move? This is the Bible Belt where everybody is hypocritical enough to say they love the Lord. Up there, those heathen don't even bother. They just say, so what? And why are you doing this to me? Well, he did it to me. And he'd already done some other things that were strange too. Because I had a bachelor's degree I didn't finish. I lacked one 3-hour course in sophomore Greek to finish a bachelor's degree that had about 20 or 30 surplus hours, but I didn't have that one course. So I didn't get the degree, and I just walked away from it. I didn't care. Didn't matter to me. I wasn't interested in the degree anyway. I learned what I could from that, and I thought, well, who cares? Who wants a degree? And I want you to know the Lord put my nose to the grindstone before I came up to Chicago for that meeting. He put my nose to the grindstone and made me go back to school, in summer school, to take sophomore Greek. And I hadn't had any Greek in 5 years. And I never was good at it. And I thought, well, I'll never make it. I'll do it. I'll do it. And I was mad at the Lord. I have to drive 200 and some odd miles to go to college to finish that stupid degree. Who wants a degree? Oh, no. My wife said she'd never seen me so mad in my life. I just went around. Why do I have to finish that old degree? I don't want a degree. Why do I need a degree? And yet the Lord just slammed every door in my face. There was no place I could go. I was lying right up just like this, going right there. So when all those doors start slamming, you might as well give up. You just think you can climb over, under, around. It won't work. He's going to funnel you right down the way he wants to go. When he's got you picked, you just might as well quit this fussing and fuming and trying to escape. It won't work, fellas. Just say, okay, Lord, I'll go with the flow. I just want to be sure it's you. But I finished that stupid degree. Hooray. And then, but I didn't know, see, that I was going to need that degree to teach school in Chicago. Isn't it funny that, aren't you glad God's smarter than you are? What a mess it would be if he left it all up to what we know and what we can figure out. But anyway, we got up here, and my wife went to work down the loop because we had some bills we needed to pay and stuff. And I kept the kids, cooked, and went to school on TV because I decided teaching would be the best way I could go. I didn't know all you had to have was a degree. I thought you had to have education courses. So I locked in and started taking education courses on TV. They had one of the universities around here had classes. So I was busy clocking off hours and taking care of the kids and cooking and running my wife back and forth the train and pastoring the little church. and it perked up and started going real well. And that's how it all started up here. With a Jonah up here just mad as a hornet because he had to come up here. But after I got up here, I don't want you to understand I was mad at the Lord. I just was complaining a mite. Did you ever do that? But after it was dead set that I was to go, well, then I just gave up, said, okay. We had 2 cars. We had a nice big Dodge station wagon, and I had a little old car called a Lloyd. It was a 2-cylinder, air-cooled, front-wheel drive car made in Germany, little 2-door. And one of my friends told me they couldn't tell whether I was riding it or wearing it. And but that little thing was a good little car. I'd bought it secondhand, and it had a 5-gallon gas tank on it. And didn't even have a gauge. It had one of those turnover things, when you had a thing and it would get down to about a half a gallon, and you turned it over and you had to go get gas, And so it had 5-gallon tank, and that thing would get 40 miles to the gallon, running 70 miles an hour. I mean, it was a whizzer. Now, if there was a hill or any wind, you might not pick up that much speed, but other than that, it was. So we decided that my wife had to have some surgery, and so we waited till she was through that, and then I took all the seats out of the little car except the one I was sitting in, and I was going to load it up as full as I could, and I'd bring it up. Then later on, I'd ride the train back and pick up the big car with the station wagon with the wife and kids and bring them up. Meanwhile, she went out to her mother's to recuperate, and my sister took the 2 girls to Kansas, and so everything's all set. And off I went to Chicago, I thought. And I was loaded to the gills. I'm very good at loading things, and I can get a lot of stuff in per square inch when I'm loading a car. And that little thing was really loaded, and I headed north from Houston. And I got 100 miles north of Houston, and a great big black Chevrolet station wagon topped a hill over there going about 65 miles an hour, and he just hit the back end of my little car and just tore it off. We spun in every direction there was, I suppose. I was safe. I didn't have a seatbelt on. I didn't need one. I just had a spot to sit in, and I couldn't move anyway except upward, because I was packed in with all our good stuff that I was taking up to Chicago with me. And you talk about a total, it was total. I didn't have a scratch or a bruise on me. And so I went back to the police station. I called my dad, and I thought, oh Lord, don't let my mother get on there. She'll go up the wall screaming the minute she hears wreck. Get my dad on there. And he answered the phone. And I said, Dad, I've just had a wreck, and the little car's totaled, but I'm all right. He said, are you sure you're all right, son? I said, yes, I am. I knew my mama wouldn't believe me. She wouldn't believe me. No, you just put it on. You just tell me that you're not all right. You've had a mama, haven't you? And so anyhow, I'm just showing you how the Lord works. I said he was going to bring his Ford to pick up the stuff, and I said, Dad, you better bring my station wagon. It's bigger. And no, I'll just bring my car. And after he hung up, my mother told him, said, Willard, you better get that big station wagon here. Said, I saw that car went left. Said, we'll never get all that stuff, and him too in that Ford of yours. And sure enough, that station wagon was full with all of us coming back. Well, I called the place up here, and they were just sick. They thought, oh no, there goes our preacher. He'll never come yet. But once the Lord makes me sure of something, I'm kind of hard to stop. So I got all the insurance business fixed. My little car, I don't know what they did with it. They finished mashing it up, I guess. You'd never believe the police looked at that thing, just shook their head, because it had spun around and hit a big upright pole, and the car hit one end of it and spun around and hit the other side with the pole, and here I was. I opened the door and got out. I think my toaster and clock radio were out on the ditch somewhere. They went out that way, and but I was perfectly all right, except I was kind of sick about my little car, I could tell it was gone. And we didn't even have time to have a funeral for it. But anyway, that's how I got up here. And I came on. I got the train and came on up. And that's how it all started. And we walked along, and I got very discouraged. Over and over again, I got discouraged. You talk about discouragement. Oh, I hit the bottom over and over again. They were head over heels in debt. Somebody had managed the money like you would not, like I would believe, because every church I ever got was broken in the hole. Every church I ever pastored, I had to go in and get them out of debt. And this one was the worst yet. But they gave me control over that checkbook, who wrote the checks to what, and we began to come out of it. I never will forget the first month that we had $15 balance at the end of the month. We weren't living on this week's offering because we were so short of money. And and it came on out. And I want you to know, by the time we got ready to move into this building cost $250,000. And you couldn't build it for $1 million today. But we got this built for $250,000, and we had all the money saved. The Scotch preacher was pulling those purse strings till they screamed, and we had savings accounts loaded with money, waiting, because I knew God was going to move us. And when we got here, we had bought land for $50,000. Otherwise, we'd have had every penny to move in here. But as it was, we were $43,000 short, because 3 or 4 years before we had bought land and bought plans to build a building over on the Illinois side. Then we found this one ready to move in. It was much better. So that's what we did. And we had to have $43,000 note. Now the bank was just thrilled to give us a note. They didn't even want a mortgage. They were just happy. Because we came to the window with, what would be the difference? 243 and between 43 and 250. Well, anyway, we had all that cash. Now the General Association of Regular Baptists built this building for us, and they didn't know they was doing it. The fighting fundies, they fight with everybody, kin folks and all, but they're good folks. And but they built this building. They built out here south about a mile. They built the building they built. They were paying $275,000 a day on their bonds, and we had this one free and clear. And they couldn't afford butcher block pews in their new building. They were too expensive. We got them, and the ones they put in here. And we moved in here, and I asked the Lord. I said, Lord, I'd hope so to move in here debt free. And we had a couple of elders who'd been trying to swing us off track for 5 years ever since I appointed them. And I asked the Lord, could I slap them out of office? I put them in, couldn't I take them out? He said, no, that'd make them seem more important than they are. And I said, Lord, if you'll deliver me from these elders, I never will appoint any more. And I haven't. He delivered us. You say, don't you have elders around here? Yep. They don't have titles, though. You try to stick a title on one of my guys, he'll act like you're trying to shoot him. He'll fight you. No, you're not going to put a title on me. No, I saw what happened to some people. They've got the big head. And we have elders. They're eldering, and they're functioning. And isn't it more important that they function than that they have the title? It's much better, too, because I'm the only one with the title. I'm pastoral. But seriously, the fellows, we have men that function, and the people know who they are. They'll go to them. They know who the men are that are, and a functioning elder. So your young men coming in, they look around and they say, well, how do you do this thing? Well, the guys that serve the most, that's the ones that people respect and go to for help. That's what I want to be like. I think that's a lot better than having somebody lording it over somebody say, well, I'm an elder, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do the other. It doesn't work that way here. But maybe that'll help you. If you're starting off little, be glad. If you start off big, you just have to lose so much before you can get going. You realize that? This church was small when I came up. It was small enough. Well, it wasn't really that small. It was a real going Jesse. We were running about 45 Sunday school. And Sunday night, of course, it dropped some. And Wednesday night, the bottom dropped out. Just the very faithful showed up for prayer meeting on Wednesday night. And we did have prayer meeting. And it rocked along like that. And we were getting a few people saved now and then, but I got very discouraged. I was teaching school, and we were doing all right. And then we had to be shaken later on. The deliverance started rolling slowly. And when it did get going, there were people that had been in that church since the ark docked. I think they got right off the ark and said, I'm going to belong to Hegwish, and I'll never leave. I know that Old Smoky, the furnace, came off of there. We had an oil furnace in the back room. I called it Old Smoky. And I knew they took it off the ark and put it right into Hegwish, along with the seats we had. There were these old theater seats that are made with veneer, that have 16 layers. And after they're old, they start splintering. The ladies ruined a pair of hose just about every service on those things. And Lord even gave us some better seats eventually. But that, some of these folks have been there so long, they were never going to leave. These preachers could come and go, but they were staying at Hegwish. I want you to know that and you know how Baptists are. They never split without a fight. I mean, they come together on conference night, having a business meeting. Gonna get this straightened out. And get rid of that preacher and his bunch. They come together and they have a big vote. And they square off at one another and almost come to blows. They have the vote and they split. And the others say, they walk right down the road, a mile or so, and build another church. That's why there's so many Baptists. Baptists don't give up like some of these denominations. They have a split and they just go off and die. With Baptists, they split and go build another church. They're too stubborn to give up. They're just going to have a church. But that's what happened with us. Only there was no fussing. I'd been through some Baptist fights. I'd had some standoffs with some people. The Masons came after him one time. Whipped the socks off of them, too. Just stood up and preached the Word of God. And boy, you talk about deadly. You could spot them. The church even divided. Part of them was sitting over here, and my bunch sitting over here just singing and having a good time. That bunch sitting over there. It was the funniest looking thing you ever saw. And I've been through those things. I knew all about those things. I even was in a Baptist church in Texas one time where they had annual call. Now, some of you that are not Baptists don't know this terminology. That means a preacher comes up to be hauled over every year. They decide whether they're going to have him again for the next year. And he has annual call. I went to that church, and it wasn't a Southern Baptist church. It was a Baptist Missionary Association church. They had split out of the Southern Baptist years before and were still mad about it. And we call them Baptist messing around, but BMA, But anyway, one of their churches called me. They were without a preacher, and they were scarce preachers. So somebody recommended me out there. I went out there, and the people liked me, so they hauled off and called me. And I was in a Southern Baptist boy in a Southern Baptist college, and they called me out there to be the pastor. And those BMAs were so mad. The leadership around there, but they couldn't do anything about it because Baptists are very independent. They do their own business. And these people said, that's the preacher we want. So they called me and I came. Now, when I went in, they took a vote and I got all the votes but 3. And every year that I stayed there, I had 3 votes against me every year. There was 2 old ladies and an old gentleman, and they came in. They didn't come to church much else, but they always came to vote and to put their vote against Pastor Worley. So I just want you to know I hadn't always been popular like I am now. If you're in a popularity contest, fellas, get out of it. You're never going to make it. It's just not going to be. I don't find that Jesus was popular, do you? Well, now he was with the publicans and harlots, people who were desperate for help. And we're pretty popular around here. We have 12 to 1,500 first-time visitors. I'd say that helps us to be, any other church as small as we are have that many visitors? You said, my lands, they must not like it. They have that many come, there's not any more stay. Well, we're a way station. Our business is to help people, minister to them, and send them on their way. If God doesn't want them here, we don't either. And people come in here puffing around and wanting to be patted on the back and everything. That's a mistake. See, I'm an old Southern boy, and we used to have a big old black tomcat when I was a kid growing up. And when it was hot summer, you stroke him, and his fur just crackle. And there was a big old green eyes. He just purr. Oh, he loved to be rubbed, you just stroke him. And I this before I was delivered, I would just stroke him, and then just when he got he was just in ecstasy, then I'd rub him back the wrong way, and he'd go, wow, And when I got to be a preacher, somehow I couldn't shake that out of my mind. And so when these kitten Christians showed up wanting to be petted, well, I'd oblige. And then just as they got all relaxed, I go, and they go, Row! He was so nice. What happened to him? I tell you, Christians have got to have more than that to them. You've got to have more than that, fella. I tell people right now, I've got a rhinoceros hide. And they tell me, well, you look like one. I didn't know you had a hide like one. But you've got to get to the place where you don't get your feelings hurt every time something happens. And even if they did get hurt, you don't fly apart. God's got to have some men who stand steady. How do you think Jeremiah felt when after he preached faithfully, they threw him in the cesspool? Threw him in the septic tank up to his armpits. I tell you, I don't want to be a Jeremiah. Used to, I was foolish when I was a young preacher. I'd read about these great prophets. And, oh, Lord, make me like that. And I've been busy trying to take it back all these last years because as I read more, I found I got smarter. Would you want to be a Jeremiah up to your armpits in a septic tank? Had you ever thought if you stood there a while, you'd get tired and sleepy, and the next thing you know, you hadn't thought about that, had you? You just thought about getting to deliver the prophetic message. You didn't know the cost of doing that. And but we're going to have to be willing, fellas, to be put through a lot of things that are not that pleasant. And above all, fellas, Jesus wants you to have a heart like his. If you've heard any testimonies from here, or if you've read them in the books, there's one strain that runs through it. When people come here, they see some real strange things happen a lot of times. They hear and see strange things they hadn't heard before. But the one thing, the theme runs through the whole thing, they feel love like they've never seen it before. And they see people loving each other and being gracious to one another. And they see, and even the cameras came here from Minneapolis a few years ago. A news camera, we let them come in here and photograph some things, and they took it back. And even the people who disagreed with us and attacked us and everything else for what we were doing, even those people, one of them was a psychiatrist who didn't believe in demons, didn't believe in anything. And he got on there, and it was the funniest thing because he said, this film that they showed me was nothing like I expected. He said, these people, I expected them to be harsh and demanding and religious like I'd seen some others. But said, this bunch, that Baptist church, I was impressed by the fact they were doing all the right things. They were loving, they were caring. Nothing the people said to them seemed to faze them. They didn't go into orbit and get angry because somebody insulted them or something. And he said, he was really, now I'm against it. I don't believe in this. It's all imaginary. But he was still stunned. The impact of the love even got through to him. And he's lost as a goose in a windstorm. And then but love is the theme that has crumpled everything. And if you saw the Geraldo clips, the clip from Geraldo, Dan made them up a 45-minute tape. It was really great. And they wanted me to come in with that thing. If I had to come in, they'd have probably shown a lot more of it. But I prayed about it, and the Lord said no. I wasn't physically able to go, and so not to go. They wanted me to come to New York. And they even asked me, after they ran the clip the first time, they called me, and this Now It Can Be Told on Geraldo. It hadn't even been announced, but they told me it was coming. And they called me 2 or 3 times, want me to come and be on that program too. But the Lord had said no, that's enough. But if you notice the clip, you noticed how thoughtful Geraldo was. He put it right at the very end, and he had nothing derogatory to say at all. And it knocked the shine off the rest of that sham and fodderall that was going on. The only one on that program that knew anything was a Catholic priest, and he didn't know much. But he knew more than those others, those 2 New Age wonders, that man and his wife, that go around shaking haunted houses. They'll think haunted house when those things get through with them. But anyway, the love that flows through the church is necessary. You're going to have love in your group. You're going to have love and toleration for each other. And that takes a lot of giving. And it takes a lot of hurting. And somebody's going to have to hurt the most to lay the trail. Did you know that? When this ministry started out, to me, if you read Battling the Host of Hell, where it started, in the upstairs room of a house over here in Burnham, that's where it started. And when that demon charged me, I had butted heads with demons over the years of my ministry before, and they'd always back off. And then I just dropped it. It's so funny that I didn't pursue it. I'd read War on the Saints 9 times when I first came back from World War II. And I was fascinated by the book. And then I just dropped it. And then, but God loaded my gun with quite a few bullets, evidently. And when I'd butt heads with these demons, and then they'd back off, they'd give up, and they'd back off quickly, and then I just dropped it and went on about my business. But then that one time, it was time up in that upstairs bedroom. And when that demon reared up at me and come at me like a tornado, glaring with hatred, I'm going to kill you, Win Worley. We have known you for years. We hate you. And in my soul, there was just a thrill went over me. I thought, now I know why I was born to fight, to fight demons. I mean, I wasn't afraid. I was just excited, you know. And a lot of things don't excite me, but demons do. I get excited about them. And one of the things that upsets people is because I'm not afraid of them. It also upsets the demons. I've been told by them, I said, well, I'm not afraid of you. And they said, I know it. That's the problem. If we could ever get you scared, we'd have you. Now what's that? Did you hear what I said? If we can ever scare you, we'll have you. Loose on yourself every day the courage of the Lord. Spirits of courage and spirits of stamina to stand against the enemy. It's more important, men, that we stand against the enemy than anything else. We also need some common sense. Good old sanctified common sense helps you. Some people rush in where angels fear to tread. And they find out the angels are there, but it's the wrong kind. Be careful. You say, how do you learn? Well, part of it's just hard knocks. But you have something we didn't have. You've got the books, the 10 books we have that have a lot of information about what some do's and don'ts. And what you can do, you see, you can learn from what we've already learned and then go from there. because we just scratched the tip of the iceberg, fellas. There's a fight coming on that's bigger than anything you've ever seen or heard tell of. I mean, it's the biggest thing that's going to happen, I think, before Armageddon. And if I read my Bible right, and I'm picking up the right senses from the Lord, he's going to hurl a tiny army into the battle and just beat the living daylights out of the devil. I mean, the devil, like I told you the other night, it's going to be the devil. When we leave, he's going to say, whew, that bunch was nothing but trouble. I'm so glad they're gone. And I'd like to see that happen, don't you? Doesn't that make sense to you that God would hit him a real good one just before he rolls in and kind of takes over things? And then, of course, we know Jesus is going to come back and mash that daylights out of him for good. And but in the meanwhile, we get a chance to be used of the Lord. Don't sell out for a mess of pottage. You know, some people say, oh, well, Judas sold out for 30 pieces of silver. Well, at least he got 30 pieces of silver. People today are selling out for a lot less than that. Why don't you just give yourself to Jesus? I heard years and years ago, give yourself, young people, give yourself to Jesus. Give your life to Jesus. He can do so much more with it than you can. If you give it to him, he'll clean it up, fix it up, hand it back to you, and it'll be so much better than anything you could have ever done. But you see, the world is calling from every hand, and all the filth and the everything else is pouring in from everywhere, trying to lure our young people away. And you know, the thing that will keep them coming to the Lord more than anything else is if you men get on your high horses for the Lord and just are really loving and kind. And if you're harsh and unloving, and if you're clamped up and you can't show your feelings and all that, get rid of that stuff. Your family needs it. This dying world needs it. The reason people keep coming to Hagwish is because we love them. Listen, back in the early days, I'm sure we had angels in disguise that came to see us. You have never seen such wrecks of humanity as came through the door of that little church. Some of them looked like some kind of wreck from the Vietnam jungle. They were scary looking when they came in. And you know, when I'd see one of those boys, the Lord would just, my heart would just well up in me. And I'd just go over and I'd say, could I have a hug? I didn't want him to slug me the first time around, you know. And he'd kind of look embarrassed and say, yeah. Of course, it was kind of like hugging a chair, you know. He had rigor mortis but I had a good time. I just hugged him. And I just let loose everything that was in me. And you know, after a while, this is what usually happened. When he first came, these guys first came, they'd heard about this funny church. And they, of course, they want to see, you know, you want to see everything. So they came to see about it. And then here comes this big preacher hugging everybody. That's real strange. What kind of a thing is this? Then he walks up to me, smiled so sweet, and said, could I hug you? And you have to either be ugly and say, no, sir. Or just, and everybody else would be looking at you and say, what's the matter with you, you know? So they agreed to it reluctantly. But you know, the funny thing, I remember one fellow in particular, he came and he was like hugging a chair. But I noticed that we just had one aisle in that church. The seats were up against the wall, we were crowded. And so he knew that I went down the aisle. To close the service, I'd be, after everything was over, I'd be walking down the aisle. And he made it a point to sit right over in this section over here. And I watched him out of the corner of my eye. I wouldn't let on that I know, watch what he, you know, I'm a lot smarter than I seem sometimes. By the way, you have to learn to play dumb sometimes, because otherwise, let people play their little things, you know. And when I started from the front, I noticed he'd start edging toward the aisle. Now this is one that didn't like to be hugged. And he'd edge, and by the time I got there, he was out right at the aisle, and he knew I'd stop and say, hi there, Bobby. And I'd hug him. And he finally got where he could hug too. You know, it took him a while to thaw out, but there was something pulling him back.
when my son-in-law came, it was the love that kept bringing him back all the time. No, I've had demons hate me, but I don't think any of them ever hated me worse than that cocaine spirit in him. Every time he manifested, he'd be going looking at that thing, go looking for me. And I was usually sitting right in front of him. Because I love to pull that thing up, get him going. And of course, I have to tell you too that in those early days, we had these extensive training courses for the workers, the fledgling workers. Don't shake your head at me, Robert. Dennis, don't you look like that. We had those classes. Now here's the tale they tell, and I want you to look at me and see if I would ever do a thing like this. In the beginning, you heard Rob mention that the demons would only manifest for me at first when I started out. And I don't know why, but they didn't like me the most. And so the others would try, and they wouldn't manifest for them. So I was the starter. I got them cranked up. And then I'd turn them over to somebody else. And I'd get them started, and the demons hated me, so they'd start exploding and going off. And then I would get another worker. I said, would you come over here and help hold this a minute? And then I'd say, excuse me, I'll be back in a little bit. And I'd go over and start another one. And another one. And sometimes I'd forget to go back. And guess who had to do the deliverance? That's the classroom. Is that right, Robert? Now, are you satisfied? But it worked. The funny thing was it worked. And then pretty soon, these starters, these fellows saw me starting them, they got to where the demons knew them, and they didn't like them either. And so they could start them up. And you know what they did? They'd call in somebody, come over here a minute and help me, would you? Oh, yeah, brand new one, coming on. Oh, yeah, I want to see what this is like here. And get them right down there. And after they'd been there a few times with somebody with them, excuse me a minute, I got to go over here and I'll be back in a minute. Mean, just walked right off and left those poor boys. But the demons came out. That's how we started. We've never had a formal, these workshops are the closest thing we've ever had to a class. I mean, we never had time. We were busy all the time. We had laboratory workshops, I guess you'd call them, but it seemed to work well. And don't get discouraged if the demons don't react to you. Sometimes there's a lot of groundwork got to be done. Pour in the scriptures. You don't have to teach about demons all the time. If you people don't know about them, it's good to take the scriptures and sit around here. A lot of people have used the tapes from here or the videotapes and use them, and they'd show those or listen to them. And then the people would sit around their Bible and discuss some of these things. It was kind of a springboard of. And don't worry about it. The demons don't suddenly explode like they do at Hagwich. You have to realize we have a terrible reputation in the spirit world. A demon told me one time, he said, you and that stupid church in Indiana, said, we hate that place. Oh, how we hate that place. I said, he said, they're always interfering. And I had just gotten there. It was Monday night. I'd flown in from Chicago to start a meeting that night. And the demon was just furious. And he said, that stupid church, they have been sending legions of angels all day long. We are completely pinned down. We can't get a bit of help. This place is completely covered with angels, and they're swarming all over the place. And I said, well, Satan doesn't care anything about it. Yes, he does. Said, our armies are out there, but they can't get through. And it's because of that stupid church of yours. They've sent angels all day long. I said, well, they don't even know for sure the exact location where I am. He said, well, that didn't make any difference. They just told them come wherever you were, and they came. And said everybody in this whole area is tied down. Said we're hemmed in. I said, really? I mean, sometimes it pays you to listen to the enemy, He may be feeding you some real encouragement. Did you know the Lord can encourage you? Oh, there goes Worley listening to the demons again. Oh, I knew he was off the ball. Well, you know what's the matter with some of these folks? They can't make the demons manifest, and they get mad at me because they manifest around me. I have to be careful when I'm walking around through the auditorium. Well, I do.
Jay Peterson was down on the floor right over there, and I was going to my office one day, and I looked to see who that was the men were holding down. It was making so much racket. And I looked down, I saw it was Jay, and I said, "Oh, hi there, son." That nasty thing came up off the floor, dragging all those men, screaming, "I'm going to kill you." And he pinned me up against the wall over there, and he like tore my clothes off of me. And all I did was just say a pleasant hello. And sometimes I walk by where there, I'll see a demon over here, and I say, "Well, you come out of my boy over there." "Shut your mouth, he's not your boy. Don't call him that." I thought, "Oh yeah, he's my spiritual boy." You come out of him. This is Papa talking. Ooh, they don't like that. They know what a father's authority is. You guys need to learn what it is. The Father's authority is awesome in the spirit world. When you are lined up with Jesus, that authority as a father is, it's awesome. You can undo what your children do. They make silly vows, especially your daughters. This snaggle-tailed idiot out there that's hornswoggling them, you can't get her to pay attention. You see what he is and she doesn't. She promises him something, you can undo it. You can override anything she says. Yes, sir. You read over there. The Father's got tremendous authority. See, the Father's lost authority in this generation. That's why the mess. Mama's busy. Jezebel's just as busy as can trying to run the trade. She's wrecking it. And the ladies are being forced to be Jezebels because they got lazy old Ahabs at home. You do it, honey. Well, you get up off your religious do nothing, start doing something. Sometimes I walk by these demons where they're manifesting, and I'll talk to them a minute, and then they start rising up and tearing up the turf. And the guys are saying, "Thanks a lot, Pastor. Would you go into your office now, please?" And I say, then I'll say, "Have a nice trip," and they just go wild. Well, I know the worker's going to send them on a vacation, so they might as well have a nice one while they're at it. They told me last night one was in here saying, "Go get that fat man. We won't give him a piece of our mind." Now, if I'd have been here, I'd say, "You can't spare it." You see, I believe in having fun in the battle, and you say, "Well, I don't think you should do that." You don't? Well, now listen. God had a sense of humor because he created monkeys and some people, and I know he had a sense of humor. You look around, you'd see. And also in the Bible, there's some funny things in the Bible. I mean, God just almost put tongue in cheek with some of the things he said. Well, look at Job, first chapter of Job. Did you ever look at that? Yea, and hast thou considered my servant Job? Oh, had he considered Job? Satan had been moving heaven and earth to tear that man up. He couldn't get to him. He hated the ground. And here's God sitting up there. Oh, have you considered my servant Job? Now, I find that refreshing. And then he went into, and he went to accusing Job. He went into a rage accusing Job, But I think it's funny. And then after he put him through the test, here he comes. He's commanded to come in again. Oh, he's mad. He just said, and God looks up and said, "Oh, have you considered my servant Job? That no matter what you do to him, he just holds his, oh, he was mad." Fellas, humor's refreshing. Laughter doeth good like a medicine. And you don't have to be laughing about purple jokes and stuff like that. There's good, clean things like that. Like I thought it was funny when God said, "Yea, and hast thou considered my servant Job?" I found that amusing. And over at the end of Jonah, there's a funny part too. When
Job evidently a little thin on hair on top. He was sitting out there on top of the hill, mad as a hornet, because he was fussing with God, and he said, I knew you'd do that. He didn't want to preach the message because he knew God would do that. That rascal knew about God's grace, and he didn't want those people to have it. He wanted those Assyrians to die. He wanted to go there and say, die, die, die. But he didn't want to preach the message because he knew that if they repented, God would do something about it. And Nineveh's judgment was delayed for 50 years. Wow. By one move of God. Now, if we had a great move of God, God might hang it up for another 50 years here. He might hang the devil's plan. Well, Principality told me years ago, he said, listen, I was up in Vancouver in some kind of a strange place we were meeting in. I don't remember, it was a mission or something. I've gone to some real odd places, but we've had deliverance everywhere I went. And I was dealing with this thing, and there was a principality. It jumped out at me. I said, who are you? He said, I'm a principality. You better watch your step. I said, oh, I'm frightened. He said, no, you're not, but you should be. Well, you just kind of go along with them if it helps their ego to tell them you're afraid of them. But he told me, he said, this country's supposed to be in Third World War. He said, you idiots don't know what you've been doing. You and that Marcus Haggard and those stupid warfare prayers. He said, those idiots all over the country, they're doing it. And I said, really? I didn't know that. But it was good news from a far country. So, I've got some good reports from the enemy. They didn't mean it to be good. They were just fussing about it. And you say, oh, you can't listen to them. They always lie. No, they don't either. They do a lot of times when it suits their purpose. When you get them mad, sometimes they'll tell you the truth. And then I've had them slip up and tell me something, and I say, oh, what about so? And I'd get my most innocent look on. Because if you show any interest at all, they'll clam up. They'll realize they've slipped, see. So you're just as wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And say, what was that you said? And this one, I asked him something else. He'd slipped and told me something important. And the Holy Spirit went ding when he told me. He said, well, that's important. And so I said, oh, really? Gee, I don't quite understand that. Could you explain that to me a little more? He said, no. And he didn't say doggone it, but he said, blankety blank, you Worley. He said, you've done it again. I'm not talking to you anymore. I said, well, why? Why? I'm just a dumb human being. I'm just a helpless human. He said, you are not helpless. And one of them even told me what. And I laugh about it. I hope you won't go away thinking I'm all puffed up, think I'm somebody because the demons talk to me. They probably don't have anybody else to talk to. I don't know. But you have to realize I've been at this so many years, over 20 years at it, and I'm bound to have picked up some funnies along the way. And one of the funniest ones was a demon looked at me one day and he says, they'd run a bunch of offers by. That's back when the days was trying to buy me off before they finally gave up on that. They'd run some real fabulous offers. They're going to do this, that, and the other, and for me if I'd just knock it off and back off from this deliverance stuff and all. And I just sit there and said, no, well, I guess not. And they said, well, he said, we just want to buy you. I said, well, that's interesting because you're offering some nice prices. But I said, even to sell a junk car, you got to have the title. And I gave the title to Jesus back when I was 17 years old. I don't even have to. You have to talk to him about it. If you want me, you have to talk to him. Woo, he went into a rage. I guess he didn't want to talk to Jesus. Didn't sound like it. But I was talking to this one, and he looked at me and he said, Worley, his eyes narrowed, and he looks, hate. He said, Worley, I don't know what you are.
I don't know for sure what you are, but you're not human. And I laughed. I said, well, I certainly am. I'm just flesh and bone, just weak as I can be. He said, no, you're not. You're dangerous. He said, I was warned about you, but I didn't think anybody would be that bad. He said, you're terrible. He said, you're just awful. I said, I am not. My Lord loves me. He thinks I'm pretty good. But, you know, I thought it was so hilarious because he thought that just because I wouldn't sell out to the devil, I must not be human. And I thought it was funny at first, and then I got to think about it. I thought, well, how sad. If the demons think they can buy off anybody. And then I thought, but they can. They can buy off almost everybody, can't they? Can they buy you? Fellas, don't sell out on Jesus. He dragged that cross as far as he could and fell under it. He made it all the way to Calvary for us. He hung on that cross and poured out all of his blood. I don't like the expression he spilled his blood, because when I spill something, it's accidental. I bump a glass of milk over and I say, oops, I spilled it. But if I take it and pour it, it's deliberate. He didn't spill his blood, fellas. He poured it out on purpose. By God. And what did he get? A bunch of trash, a handful of trash, like us. How could we ever do anything but just be bound to it with love that'll take us all the way to eternity? Say, Lord, whatever you want. No price is too high. And you'll yo-yo up and down. I mean, there'll be times when you'll really dedicate to the Lord, and there'll be other times you'll back off and say, I'm tired of being good now. I want some of the good stuff going around. I'm tired of being left out. I'm tired of nobody liking me. And the Lord will still love you. He'll still pick up on his option. You gave it to me. It's mine. You can't take it back. But, fellas, somebody's got to love the people. You say, well, I don't have much to offer. I don't either. I feel like the little boy with the loaves and fishes. When I heard Jesus speaking, he just touched my heart. And all I could do was just offer him what little I had. I didn't have much. Still don't have much. But I found out if you just give him all of it, he just turns around and uses it. I gave him the loaves and fishes, and my Lord, look what he's done. And I mean that. When I read those 10 books, and I got my name on the cover, I read them and I think, Lord, this is good. And I'm in awe of it because it's like it's somebody else's. I mean, I feel detached from it. I know that I wrote the thing and all that, but I'm so aware that the Lord did this. And I read it and I think, oh, this is so good. Thank you, Lord. And if he can flow through me to bless thousands of people like he has, you know how that makes me feel? Puffed up? You gotta be kidding. I feel like crawling under the rug. I think, Lord, how could you be that good? All the times I've been so stubborn and contrary and fussy and hateful and ungrateful, and then you turn right around and just bless thousands of people and use me to do it. My God, what kind of a God do we have? A marvelous God, fellas. Don't you ever forget it. We've got a marvelous God. And he's worth it. He's worth giving yourself to, fellas. That doesn't mean you have to sell out, go to Bible school or something like that. You might if that's what God wants. But basically, it's just go back with a new attitude
My job is a stewardship. This is the way the Lord gave me to make my living, support me and my family. These blessings, these material things God's put in my hands are to be used for His glory. Lord, give me wisdom how to know how to do that. And keep before Him all the time, fellas, the need for a broken heart. The reason people have gravitated to me is because the Lord broke my heart, because people were bound. And when I've gone places with this ministry, I've watched, and there'll be times I'll stop right in the middle of the message, and the Lord will put on my heart about the bound people. And the tears just come, and it breaks my heart because people are bound and they're not free. And you know, that hits like a sledgehammer. I've had men come up to me, tell me, "You like to kill me, preacher." I stand up, I was criticizing you. I thought, that fat fellow, what's the matter with him? He's got a real problem. I can't get anything out of this. Listen to him, why did I even come? And said, "Lord, have mercy." You started in about 10, 15 minutes after you started speaking. All of a sudden you stopped. You started crying. Talking about the bound people. He said, I thought I would die. I said, "Lord, I'm going to die if he doesn't quit. He's killing me." He said, "My God, man, where did you get love like that?" I said, "From Jesus. You can have it too. Somebody's got to love these people. Somebody's got to care. Jesus cared. That's why He gave." And the reason people are not giving today to the Lord, I'm not talking about money, Lord have mercy, we've had enough money saved. I'm talking about give yourself. God's more interested in you give yourself. He's more interested in people like Larry Matheny, who's asking nothing of nobody and just got on a plane going. Lord said, "Go to Frankfurt, Germany," and you go to Spain. That's all he knows. Doesn't know the language, doesn't know anybody there. And the Lord opens doors all over the place. And He's strewing deliverance material everywhere He goes. He's not making a name for Himself, but He's making tracks for Jesus. You may not do that. You may be used a different way. But the main thing is to get in your slot and let Jesus make you into what you ought to be. Well, fellas, we just run here and there and yonder. I hope we shot a few rabbits on the way. We had the lights turned up because I'd planned to pull you up out of the audience and let you ask any specifics, but we were about out of time, and you've been sitting a long time, and I appreciate it. But you're crying, and that's good. Tears wash out filth. I read that a long time ago. Somebody told me that. Don't ever be ashamed of your tears, fellas. It's good. It's better to cry for something good than it is something bad. Do you know that? And men sometimes are so ashamed to cry. Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and cry if you cry for the right things. But you know something I think? Oh yeah, I knew something special was fixing to happen. Praise the Lord. Before we leave here, the Lord said it's time for a little old love feast. Now some of you fellas don't know what that is. But that's where you go to somebody else and just tell them you love them. If you happen to have somebody here you have aught against, it's such a good time to go and say, "I'm sorry. Would you forgive me?" And it'd be a good time for that. Dennis, you want to get up here? Dennis wants to go around and hug. I know what he wants to do. Let's stand. What should we sing? Something about that name? Would that do all right? Oh yeah, we'll do the rain song, and you just let the Lord lead you. Go around and just as the Lord leads you, hug somebody and tell them you love them. There are guys here with broken hearts today that they came here with heavy loads on their hearts for various reasons, and they need somebody to tell them they love them. Go ahead, Dennis. The turtle dove is singing the sweet song of morning. The leaves of the trees throw the silver cups up to the sky. Land is thirsty and so am I. It's beginning to rain. Hear the voice of our Father. He saved who's
Last night I was supposed to come up here and get some of this. It was free.
Well, praise the Lord. Let's try to get back for lunch from the lunch break around 2:15 if we can, please.
I had to come say hi to you. I don't know if you remember me or not. So glad you're here.